Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Colin Jones, president of City Club. For more than 100 years, City Club of Portland is where civic-minded people have come together to find solutions to our region's biggest challenges. Today, we are a diverse network of people who are eager to learn, connect, and share ideas for a better Oregon. Thank you for joining us at the Sentinel Hotel, where thousands of people are watching, listening in, and participating by radio, TV, and online. Listeners are here via X-Ray FM's website and radio stations, 107.1 FM and 91.1 FM. Live viewers are watching on KGW's website, Facebook feed, and news app, and TV viewers will watch a recording of today's program via OpenSignal's community media television stations. We are incredibly grateful for the support of our media partners in bringing Friday Forum to our community. In addition to City Club's valued media partners, our volunteers and staff enable us to put on Oregon's best civic programs week after week. A special thank you goes out to the sponsors of today's forum: AFSCME, Portland Public Schools, SEIU Local 49, The Standard, and Wells Fargo. Please join me in welcoming and showing our appreciation for everyone. City Club of Portland hosts a Civic Scholars Program where we invite local high school students to our forums to participate in civic dialogue. Today we welcome Civic Scholars from the North Clackamas School District. Let's give them one more round of applause. We are especially excited to invite one of our Civic Scholars, Audrey Miucci from Rex Putnam High School, to introduce our governor. Please join me in welcoming Audrey.
Kate Brown is Oregon's 38th governor. Before becoming governor, she served in the Oregon House of Representatives, the Oregon State Senate, and as the Secretary of State of Oregon. As governor, she has signed legislation to make it easier to register to vote, increase the minimum wage, spend $5.3 billion on transportation, and improve access to health care. Governor Brown came to Oregon to attend Lewis and Clark's Northwestern School of Law, where she's received her law degree and certificate in environmental law. With her husband, Dan, Brown helped raise Dan's son and daughter here in Portland. When Governor Brown is not busy at the Capitol in Salem, you will find her enjoying nature throughout Oregon. Please join me in welcoming Governor Kate Brown.
Great job. Did you get nervous? A little bit. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Audrey, great job. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I wasn't nervous until I came in and saw so many familiar faces. So I'm just delighted to be here this afternoon. And I have a set of prepared remarks, but thought what I would do is just talk off the cuff a little bit about where we're focused this legislative session, and then leave ample time for questions. And my deal with you is this: if you keep your questions to 30 seconds, I'll keep my answers to 30 seconds. So we can get through a lot of questions that way. So there's some really great news out there. As we all know, Oregon's economy is doing very well. We have the lowest unemployment rate on record, and we have one of the fastest job growth rates in the entire country. Yay! There is, of course, a however to that. And the however is that economic prosperity hasn't been inclusive. It hasn't included our rural communities, our communities of color, and our low-income communities throughout the state. And in my travels throughout the state, I meet a lot of families who are really struggling with the cost of housing, cost of health care, cost of child care, and of course, the cost of higher education. And so one of my top focuses this legislative session is tackling what I'm calling affordability issues. And top on the list, of course, is housing. This is an issue where, yes. So I may be unique in terms of governors, but I believe that every Oregonian deserves a warm, safe, dry place to call home, and it needs to be affordable and accessible. And as you know, Oregon, like many other states, is really struggling with issues around affordable housing in terms of our children and families, in terms of chronically homeless, and of course, our veterans. So I have asked the legislature to do something different, and that is to act quickly on tackling affordable housing issues this legislative session. We crafted a $400 million package to invest in affordable homes, rental assistance, and homelessness prevention. Just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the problem, in my first term as governor, roughly the last 3.5 years, we invested $300 million. And it truly feels like peanut butter. Spread statewide, it's way too thin. So I'm asking everybody to double down on our efforts and to really dig deep and make sure that we are investing at a much higher level to build more affordable units. I believe very strongly that we need to get our children and their families off the streets. Oregon Public Schools would tell you that we have roughly 20,000 children throughout the state who are either housing insecure or houseless. We have hundreds, not thousands, of folks that are chronically homeless. And my investment is to tackle what we're calling permanent supportive housing. That is services co-located with affordable housing. It is a best practice, and I'm asking the legislature to work with me and move quickly on that. And of course, our veterans. Roughly 300 to 1,500 veterans throughout the state of Oregon are also homeless. And we have the resources. We can get these children, we can get these families off the streets. It is not something that I can do alone. It's going to take strong partnerships with Multnomah County, the city of Portland. It's going to take all of us working together. And I know we can do this. I know we can make a huge difference and work toward making sure that everyone has a warm, safe, dry place to call home. I'll take a breath. Good, I can take a breath. So the second issue for me on the affordability issue is health care. And working across the aisle and around the state, we've done some really great work. At this point in Oregon, we roughly have about 94% of adults covered and 98% of our children. With the work we did last session, 100% of our children are eligible for the Cover All Kids program, which is really fabulous. But there is definitely more work to be done. And again, I'm asking the legislature to move quickly to provide a 6-year funding plan for the Oregon Health Plan. My goal is to move toward 99% coverage for adults and, of course, 100% coverage for all of our kids. And to do it through a 6-year period so we don't have to come back and have this battle every 2 years. The good news is the legislature is moving very quickly on 2 pieces of the package, and they both came out of the Budget Ways and Means Committee this morning, so that's a very good sign. There are 2 more pieces left on the table that I think are critical to ensuring that we have a 6-year broad-based funding strategy for the Oregon Health Plan. One is an employer assessment. And in developing this package, we had a number of folks at the table, including private sector employers. And one of the employers said, I cover my employees with health care. I shouldn't be subsidizing other employers who aren't paying for their employees' health care. So that is one piece that we need to keep moving forward on, an employer assessment. And the second piece is a cigarette tax. And we have not increased the cigarette tax in Oregon in several years. We are $2 behind both California and Washington, and it is time that we add a $2 increase to our cigarette tax to both discourage folks from continuing to smoke or starting to smoke or vape, as the case may be, and also to help underwrite the costs of the Oregon Health Plan. So I'd love to get your support on that one. So those are a couple of the affordability issues that we're tackling. There are many more, including childcare and higher education. I expect I'm going to get some question on those, so I'll leave those to your brilliant questions. As we're tackling the affordability issues, we absolutely need to keep moving forward and prepare Oregon for the future. And that means making sure that we have an Oregon as beautiful and bountiful for future generations as the one that we all enjoy today. And we all know in this room what is happening in terms of climate change in this state. The Rogue Valley was inundated with smoke for over 6 weeks this past summer. I know you haven't forgotten the difficulty of the I-84 corridor being closed for several weeks during the Eagle Creek fire. We have 90% of the state in drought right now. I know it doesn't feel like it today with the rain coming down, but about 90% of the state is in drought. And, of course, we saw last year, 2018, was the warmest year on record in Oregon since 1895. 1895. So we've done some really good work. We moved forward on the low carbon fuel standard. We moved forward on the nation's first coal to clean, intentionally moving away from coal generated electricity. And we moved forward on a transportation package that invested in public transit for the first time ever in communities around the state. And I think a unique program nationally, an EV rebate for low income families. And so we've done some really great work. Unfortunately, it's not enough. In 2007, Governor Kulongoski set our carbon emissions reduction goals, and we're really struggling to meet those goals. So we need to take more steps. And the proposal that we have on the table, you might know it as Clean Energy Jobs or House Bill 2020. It's a market-based strategy to encourage the business community to reduce carbon emissions at the lowest cost. Obviously, there are a number of jurisdictions around the world that have taken this similar approach. I think it is the right approach for Oregon, and I am fully expecting to sign House Bill 2020 before the legislative session ends, but it's going to need your support. We need your voices at the Capitol to make it happen. Thank you. And as we are tackling the future, it also means making sure that all of our children have the tools to compete in a global economy. And for me, that means, at the very least, ensuring that every single one of them graduates from high school with a plan for their future, and that we have a higher education system that's affordable and accessible to Oregon families across the state. You guys know the numbers. We are really struggling in terms of improving outcomes for all of our students. So I'm asking the legislature to make a significant investment in our education system. First of all, in terms of K through 12 number, a CSL investment of $9 billion. That is significantly higher than any other administration's investment. But we can't stop there. That's not enough. I'm asking them to invest in early childhood education. The data is also very clear here. We know that 90% of a child's brain development happens in the first 5 years. So we need a comprehensive system of early childhood care and education in this state. We need to make sure that every single child shows up to kindergarten ready to learn, and that their parents, their siblings have the support and services that they need to thrive in this state. So that's number one. Number two, reducing class size in K through 3. I've heard from too many students, too many parents, and too many educators. Huge class sizes are really a problem. So we need to reduce class sizes in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Obviously not a huge issue in Enterprise, Oregon, but I know it is in Gladstone and in David Douglas school districts, and certainly in the Portland Public School districts. We also need to make sure that we have a full school year, 180 days. And I have to say, I know there's some high school students, Rex Putnam students here. They don't get very excited when I say a few more days of school, but it's certainly the national standard, and we need to make it happen in Oregon. Lastly, in terms of improving our outcomes for all of our students at the high school level, fully investing in career and technical education. You might know it as Ballot Measure 98, fully funding, ensuring that every single high school student in every school across the state has access to hands-on learning. It's really important. So when I talk to kids, they say to me that hands-on learning makes the difference for them staying in school and graduating from school. It makes their work in the classroom relevant, and it teaches them very valuable skills. One quick story, I was down at Junction City High School in the, it was the first day of school. I toured a culinary arts program, and when I did culinary arts, and I won't tell you what year, it was mostly girls, right? Well, now it's a really nice gender blend. In fact, there's a lot of young men in that class, in that particular class. And I asked one of the young men, "What is this teaching you?" And he looked at me and he said, "You can't be governor alone. It requires teamwork." And that's what I'm learning in this culinary arts program. So we know the impact of these classes are truly extraordinary, and its improvement in terms of high school graduation rates across our communities of color and our rural communities is phenomenal. So we absolutely must fund Ballot Measure 98 and ensure that every single high school student has access to hands-on learning. In funding my budget, I am trying to create what I'm calling a seamless system of education from cradle to career. I talked about early childhood, talked about K through 12. In my mind, that also includes ensuring that access to our community colleges and our universities is affordable for our Oregon students. So there are a couple of things that we did. I know many of you are familiar with the Oregon Promise program. It enables students across the state, high school students, to attend community college for a mere $50 a semester. They have to have a certain grade point average. I think it's a 275. We want to be able to expand that program. We want to make sure that we can continue to invest in the Oregon Opportunity Grant. My budget proposes that we add 16,000 students to open the doors of opportunity for them to our community colleges and universities. But it has to be a seamless system. And so I'm hoping that we can get the entire education system rowing together to make sure that we make these key investments that will really improve educational outcomes for all of our students. Lastly, none of this is possible without a very strong democracy. And so I think following on my former Secretary of State days and having what I think can be described as a brutal re-election bid for governor, I'm really excited about the opportunity to continue to strengthen Oregon's democracy. We certainly have led the nation. Yes, thank you. We have certainly led the nation with vote by mail. Thank you, Phil Kiesling and Norma Paulus. And certainly we haven't rested on our laurels with our automatic voter registration, which was the first of its kind in the entire country to automatically register all eligible Oregonians. Now 17 states have followed our lead with that particular proposal. But we can't rest on our laurels. Our state motto, as Colin mentioned, is "She flies with her own wings." And in Oregon, unfortunately, around campaign finance, we are still the wild, wild west. We are one of 5 states in this country with no restrictions on campaign expenditures and campaign finance, and that needs to change. That will, yeah, thank you. That will require a constitutional amendment, at least with our current state of the law. And so I'm working with colleagues and allies in the legislature to give you the opportunity to vote on that in the next general election cycle. But I think we can also do a better job around ensuring a higher level of transparency and campaign finance reporting. And so we will continue that work. I'd love to get your support. And then lastly, a proposal I've been working on for a number of years, and I know is an issue for families across the state, and that is making sure that postage is paid on your ballots. And we're going to make that happen this legislative session. As we tackle the campaign finance arena, I just have to say, no one should be able to buy a megaphone so loud that it drowns out all the other voices. How do we make all of this happen? We do it the Oregon way, working across the aisle and around the state, working with Republicans and Democrats, folks from our rural communities and our urban communities, and we put aside politics to do what's right for Oregon. I know that by working together, we can build a better Oregon. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Over here? All right.
For our radio audience, this is City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Colin Jones, president of City Club, and it is time for our Q&A with Governor Brown. Everyone watching or listening today is welcome to ask a question. If you've written a question on an index card, hold it high for City Club staff to collect. You may also submit questions via Twitter using the hashtag FridayForum. City Club members are welcome to ask a question at the microphone. Again, we do have civic scholars here from Rex Putnam High School in the North Clackamas School District, so please step back and make sure a student is able to ask the first question. We value this as a space for dialogue, not monologues, for questions, not speeches.
Including from the governor.
Everybody. So when it is your turn, please identify yourself as a member or a student and ask one question in 30 seconds or less.
Okay, hi, I'm Kendra Cutler. I'm from Rex Putnam, over there with the Civic Scholars, and we had a question about what is being done and what we can do to help teachers in schools learn how to better deal with students with anxiety and depression and understanding like how to help them best succeed in school.
Thank you, Kendra, and I really appreciated the opportunity to meet with you and other students ahead of time. So I'm hearing a number of issues from teachers and parents and students in our schools around social emotional learning, students that have been impacted by trauma, behavioral health issues, and it's not just at kindergarten, it continues all the way through. We invested over $7 million in a package to provide tools for our teachers, our educators at the local level. I have to tell you, after having many more conversations, it wasn't enough. And we're working closely with superintendents and teachers and, frankly, students as well to make sure that we can make a significant investment in making sure that our teachers have the tools and the resources that they need, that we have behavioral health counselors in our schools across the state. The challenges that we're seeing in our schools are tremendous, and it is my expectation, and I think Oregonians would agree, that they need to have the resources to deal with these issues, and our students need help, and we need to provide them with that help in the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Brown, for coming. I'm Aisha Lorenz. At the Clean Energy Jobs Bill Lobby Day on February 6th, you said you envision a carbon-free future. It would be difficult to get a carbon-free future if we build the Jordan Cove fracked gas terminal in Coos Bay, which would become Oregon's largest greenhouse gas emitter. As the chair of the State Land Board, are you willing to be one of the 2 votes needed to stop the Jordan Cove project? Please give me a yes or no.
Well, Aisha, I can't answer your question with a yes or no because the director of the Department of State Lands is going to be making the decision on the permit, not the land board. So here's what I can tell you about the Jordan Cove project. And when I ran for this office, I was very upfront with Oregonians that it's critically important that we have a governor that's willing to ensure that all voices are heard, that our regulations are followed in the state, and that our statutes are also being enforced. And that's exactly what I will do as your governor. Part of being a leader, including on the environment, is making sure that every side, everybody has an opportunity to have their voice be heard. So I've committed to a fair and timely process. That's exactly what I will provide to Oregonians. I'm expecting I'm going to get more LNG questions, so I'll leave it at that for right now. Thank you, Aisha.
Chris Andre, City Club member. I'm with her on the Jordan Cove. I believe that FERC already denied the permit. My question, however, is you said, I believe, that you wanted to encourage jobs in the green energy sector. And when you say encourage, what do you mean by that? How would you go about accomplishing that goal?
So I don't have the numbers off the tip of my head, but if you look at what's happening along the West Coast, from California to British Columbia, all of our economies are doing quite well. As I mentioned, Oregon has one of the fastest job growth rates in the entire country. And part of that, of course, is our jobs that are booming in the clean energy sector, whether it's wind or solar or geothermal. And so we want to make sure that we are continuing to grow those jobs, not just in Portland, but outside the Portland metropolitan area. And so that means making the investments, working with the private sector. We have over 130 wind and solar companies in Oregon right now, and it means encouraging their development and making sure they're providing us with cleaner, greener power. Thank you.
Hi, Governor. My name is Jeff Carlson. I'm a City Club member, and I'm also the medical director of one of the child psychiatric units here in the state. And I was curious if, just to ask the question, we have kids spending weeks to months in the acute hospital setting, and I was curious if you could give me an update on sort of access to lower levels of care like residential treatment and subacute and those sorts of things. We're really looking forward to improving that process.
Our entire process around behavioral health needs to be improved in Oregon. It's something I've been working on for many, many years. My focus right now, most immediately, is with the Oregon Health Plan and making sure that we are fully integrating behavioral health into the Oregon Health Plan. We're hoping to guarantee better outcomes and fuller integration through the contracting work we're doing through the CCO 2.0 process right now. But I don't think that's enough. We know you were here when we deinstitutionalized our behavioral health systems in the 90s, and the dollars were supposed to follow into the communities, and that just did not happen. And so I think we need to be looking at different levels of care to make sure that families, and particularly children, get the support and services that they need. It also means making sure that we have a workforce that's trained, again, not just for the metropolitan area, but for communities, our rural communities as well, that we can deliver that care, whether it's through technology like Project Echo, through the internet, that care is culturally competent to meet all the needs of our communities. Thank you.
Hi, Governor. My name is Elise, and I'm a City Club member and a concerned citizen. I also have an LNG question, and hopefully it's a simple one, which is that given that Jordan Cove would be the emissions equivalent of putting 7.9 million new cars on the road, how can Oregon continue to meet those ambitious climate goals that you mentioned if this project is approved?
Well, I think that's a really good question. That project has not been approved yet, and let me give you a little information on the project right now. To date, the company has not provided us with their plans. We have not seen a draft environmental impact statement or their application to the Oregon Department of Energy, and we're awaiting their response to 81 questions that DEQ asked regarding their water quality applications. So, as you know, there are multiple permitting processes that are occurring in Oregon right now, and it is my expectation that agency directors follow the law and make the best decision with the information they have. As you know, Director Vicki Walker did 4 or 5 hearings around the state. She had hundreds, if not thousands, of people show up for those hearings and testify, frankly, on both sides of this issue. She has to review all of those public comments. I think she had thousands, 30,000 comments, and she will be making a decision after reviewing that information. So it's my expectation that agency directors follow the law and Oregon regulatory process. Thank you.
Hello, Governor Brown. My name is Jacob Hoffman Andrews. You said yourself that the state was devastated by massive fires in 2018, and 9% of the state is still in drought. What would you say to reassure the 17,000 Oregonians who live in the hazardous burn zone that would be created if the Jordan Cove pipeline is approved?
Well, the approval process hasn't been completed, and I would encourage everyone, regardless of where you are on this issue, to make sure your voice is heard. If you don't have the time and ability to show up at a hearing with the different agency processes, make sure that you submit an email or you call the agency to make sure that your voice is heard. Thank you.
For my knowledge, could everyone who's planning to ask a question about the Jordan Cove in line raise your hands? I'm not going to kick you out of line. I just want a sense of where we're at. Great.
Governor Jack Kerfoot, I'm a City Club member. As you're probably aware, Europe has been developing offshore wind for over a decade. The east coast of the U.S. is now aggressively pursuing offshore wind projects. Does Oregon have any plans to incentivize the development of offshore wind? And specifically, with the expiration of the federal renewable energy tax credits in 2020, do you expect the state will consider implementing statewide renewable energy tax credits? Thank you.
I can't answer the second question. I think given what's been happening around energy tax credits, that in Oregon, that is something that the legislature will be taking a look at this legislative session and certainly considering that. In terms of wind energy, I'm familiar with some of the older projects that were not successful. I just think we have to look at all renewable, clean energy options on the table, and certainly wind is one of them. I know it's been very successful in not only the East Coast, but in certainly Denmark and other countries. I just think that it's an incredible opportunity for Oregon. I know there's a particular project down on the South Coast that I'm watching very carefully. I think we have to move in this direction, and I'm very supportive. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chloe. I'm a senior at Grant High School. I was wondering, what advice do you have for students that want to become active in politics?
My favorite question. Thanks, Chloe. And you're in good steps. I think I saw Chair Kafori here earlier. I think, aren't you a proud Grant High School graduate? Yes, yes. So I recommend a number of things. Number one, make sure that you follow your heart, that you follow your passion. Many of you know that I got my start as an advocate on women's issues, making sure that women have access to reproductive health care and other feminist issues. Yes, I am a proud feminist. So I encourage you to follow your heart. The second piece is learn really good public speaking skills. This has been a challenge for me. I had to learn how to debate in the last few years, and I wish I'd taken the opportunity to do the classroom law project's We the People program, because that would have made me a really great debater. So certainly learning good public speaking skills is really important. And the other thing is just dive in now. There's nothing saying you can't make a difference. And I would really encourage you, if you have an issue in front of the City Council or the County Commission, to dive in. If you are passionate about environmental issues, come down and testify on House Bill 2020. Do it now. Don't wait until you're old enough to vote. Do it now.
Awesome. We'll take a question from the cards. This one says, I'm concerned that your base budget eliminates the Oregon Promise, raises tuition, and slashes community college programs. How do you envision meeting the state's goal of 40% of residents with associate's degrees in the 40-40-20 plan with this level of investment?
So we can't. And that's why I created an investment package, a $2 billion investment package, to ensure that we could make a significant investment in community colleges. Number one, $70 million to make sure they could keep tuition rates down. Number two, investing an additional $70 million so they continue their work around workforce development. Our community colleges are truly the powerhouses of our workforce development system. And of course, in our universities, additional funding to ensure they can keep tuition rates down under 5%. And expand access. I think it was $120 million to the Oregon Opportunity Grant. So we can't do it in the base budget. That's why I'm asking the legislature to put more money on the table and make the pie bigger.
Awesome. Thank you. Take a question at the mic.
Hi, Governor Brown. My name is Nick Paisler. I'm a senior at Cleveland High School, and I'm also the student representative to the Portland Public Schools Board. Thank you.
See? Right. This is how you get involved.
Exactly. No, I liked your responses to the last question. So I'd like to know what your plan is for the future for major funding for Oregon's public education and how to keep that major funding going throughout the next couple of years, 10 years.
Well, that was quite a nice segue. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the investment package. Before we get more resources on the table, we have to continue to make sure that dollars are being spent effectively. And I think you're probably familiar with the 50-page audit that came out from the Secretary of State's office on Portland Public Schools and Department of Education. I see that as a roadmap for accountability and how we can improve our tools and make sure that taxpayer dollars are being well spent. So we're working very closely with the Department of Education and school districts to improve the level of accountability. I know that Portland Public Schools are doing the same thing and using that audit as a roadmap. We're looking at where we can tighten our belts and figure out how we can put more money into the classroom. The harsh reality is we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing and expect different results. And so I think it's critically important that we grow the pie, that we put more resources on the table. We haven't significantly increased student funding, K through 12 funding, since the early 90s, and we're not going to improve educational outcomes unless we close the opportunity gap by investing in early childhood education. So we're going to need your help. As we have this conversation in the legislature, the Student Success Committee is starting the revenue conversation, and I think it's really important that you and your colleagues, your fellow students, and your school board members come down to Salem and support our efforts in this work. Thank you.
We'll do another question from the cards. With revenue in Oregon largely dependent on income taxes and the tax kicker remitting surpluses to residents, economic downturns inevitably require spending cuts to areas like education and healthcare. How will the state protect its most vulnerable populations during the next recession?
So that's a really good question. And I have to say that if we want to make a significant investment in our education system, that the time is now. We know we cannot wait. We know that if we wait, the economy is likely to falter. So we have to make this investment now. How do we protect our vulnerable communities? I mentioned at the outset that we have to ensure that all of our communities, our rural communities, our low-income communities, our communities of color, have the tools and the resources they need to thrive. That means focusing on economic development in our underserved communities, and I can certainly talk about that. But it includes workforce development. It includes investing in infrastructure, whether it's roads and bridges or housing and water. It means investing in innovative technologies like cross-laminated timber and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, that are creating really good paying jobs in rural Oregon. It means making sure that we're tackling the regulatory issues that companies say they're seeing on the ground, or when we have a company that wants to come in, we've got one down in Klamath Falls, a Spanish company right now, that we are certainly making sure that the property there is shovel ready. So it's all of those efforts. It is workforce development, and it's certainly investing in our education system.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Governor Brown. I'm a member of City Club. My name is Marissa Johnson, and I wanted to say thank you for your commitment to offering childcare, early childhood education, and healthcare to all of Oregon's children. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you will be supporting foster children and foster families in the coming biennium.
Thank you. So I'm a lawyer. I used to represent children and families in the foster care system, so these issues are very near and dear to my heart. I can tell you a lot of stories from my time in the system. There is no one silver bullet, and this is not work that I can do alone, or Farrah Bors or Marilyn Jones can do alone. We need a community effort here. Top priorities for the department: making sure that our children are safe, recruiting and retaining foster parents, and making sure that we're providing them with the support and services that they need. And then, of course, making sure that our caseworkers on the front lines have fewer than 35 families, that we're down at the national average of 17 families, so that they can spend the time and energy needed to making sure the families get the support they need. My focus is on stemming the tide. We have 1.5 times the number of children in our foster care system nationally. How do we stem that tide? And that means tackling the root causes. I talked about a system of early childhood care and education. That means home visitation. It means making sure when someone has a baby that we show up and ask them if they need anything. It is a voluntary program, and it is a universal program. It means funding early intervention services. We've done a really good job through the CCOs, the coordinated care organizations, identifying children that need help. Unfortunately, we haven't fully funded our early intervention support services. We must do that. So it means investing in programs, wraparound services, whether it's relief nurseries or parenting programs that can support our families and give them the tools that they need to ensure their kids are thriving. So it's all of these pieces. I cannot do this alone. I need your help. We are just kicking off statewide. Marion County has done a tremendous amount of work. Every kid, I think in the next 3 months, will have access to a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate. If they did it in Marion County, we can do it in every single county across the state. So now's your time to stand up.
Where do you stand on HB 2001, which does statewide upzoning to fourplexes?
So I talked about the investments that we need to make to build more affordable units and prevent homelessness and provide rental assistance. I didn't talk about giving local jurisdictions the tools. And I think since I've become governor, we have passed a number of bills to give local jurisdictions more tools to address this housing crisis. There are a number of bills in the legislature from 2000 to, I don't remember, I'm starting to get confused because I know some of the bills were 2007 from last session. There are a number of bills. I expect the legislature to thoroughly vet these bills. I know that Senate Bill 608 is coming to my desk. I look forward to signing that, but I think it's critical that we have innovative, creative tools to help local jurisdictions build more affordable units and keep people in their homes.
Wynn Wakala, City Club member and chair for the Health and Public Safety Issue Committee, so if anybody wants to join today for $98 and join my committee, you're welcome. Recently, a pimp was arrested. He had a 15-year-old dancing at a strip joint, and he prostituted her through there. He was able to get fake ID for her being 18. The Senate Bill 280 is requiring that people who run strip clubs treat the girls as employees rather than contractors and know that they're 18. But since we now people cannot smoke or drink until they're 21, would you be in favor of making sure that the girls cannot strip dance in a room full of men they've never met until they're 21?
I am not supposed to say, yes, I support a particular proposal until my legal team has vetted it, but I'm very intrigued by the concept. I've got my legal counsel right here, so I just, we obviously are very interested in any tools that we can provide. This sounds like common sense to me. I'd have to look at the details. Thank you. Literally, Misha Isaac's sitting right here.
Right. Making faces at you.
Yes. Not really. We're teasing you, Misha.
So two things. So one is I will just note from the cards, there have been about half a dozen or maybe a dozen questions on community college. So we've already asked that question, but there's widespread interest. The one thing that we
Good.
haven't...
I expect everyone who supports community colleges to come down to the legislature and testify in support of their budget.
There you go.
And more importantly, when we're talking about additional resources, we need to just show up or send an email or call your legislator. Thanks.
Absolutely. This question's fairly straightforward. When will PERS be addressed?
Yeah. Again, I'll just take 30 seconds to answer that question.
Exactly.
So this has been an ongoing issue that I've worked at tackling every year since I've become governor. My focus right now, my priority right now, is getting additional resources on the table, and by that I mean money, to stabilize the unfunded actuarial liability so we can stabilize employer rates for K through 12 schools. So that has been my focus. I passed legislation, it was bipartisan legislation, Senate Bill 1566, a year ago. We need to accelerate our efforts and get more resources to set aside into side accounts to stabilize rates. There also are other conversations happening about employee benefits, but I have to tell you, to me on the unfunded actuarial liability, because that is what's driving employer rates. And that's what we need to tackle. So honestly, it would be really good to have a very long conversation. It'd be great. You could bring Rakaya Adams and the director of the PERS system and folks from my team sit down and have an hour-and-a-half conversation about PERS. That would be really useful, I think.
We did have 2 consecutive hour-long conversations last year. We're still digging
Sorry.
in. No,
Sorry.
totally. Please.
Hello, thank you for being here. So my name is Lee Vasquez, and I am a first-generation college student, and I am also a non-documented student. I am here advocating for both identities. I am here advocating for both of my identities. As a college student, it is important for me that community college remain affordable. PCC has come out in protection for the undocumented students by saying they are a sanctuary college. With that said, what will you be doing to keep protecting my communities and to ensure that community colleges remain affordable and accessible and that undocumented students will have a chance at those opportunities? And how can we hold you accountable? We don't want any more broken promises, and we want action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as you know, Oregon is a sanctuary state, and with the help of a lot of voices around the state, we were able to defeat the repeal of our sanctuary status, ballot measure 105, on the November election. Very good news. Look, I have fought to ensure that our dreamers are treated like every other student in this state, and I will continue that fight. I believe that all of our community colleges and our universities should be particularly sanctuaries, and that we need to make sure that we continue to have access. I signed last year an additional equity bill to address some of the technical issues in our access legislation. It also comes down to resources and making sure that families across the state can afford to attend our community colleges and our universities. We're going to need more money on the table, and I would love to work with you. I think it's so important that your voice is at the table, and thanks for speaking out, and continue to hold my feet to the fire on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. This question asks, is criminal justice reform a high priority for you? And if it is, what is your top reform?
So I was really pleased about the work we did in the 2017 session, House Bill 2355. The goal of that was to reduce possession, some felonies, possession of a controlled substance to misdemeanors, because we knew from the data provided to us by the Criminal Justice Commission that Latino and African American men were more harshly treated under these statutes. So I was very pleased that we were able to get that bill through. That is not enough. We have to continue our work, and the Criminal Justice Commission is doing great work identifying particular crimes that more harshly impact communities of color, and I look forward to working with the legislature on that. The second piece, frankly, is broader reforms to our criminal justice system. That means tackling ballot measure 11. I think we have to focus on youth in the ballot measure 11 arena, and I anticipate there's a number of conversations happening in the legislature right now. It also means making sure that we have more law enforcement of color, more judges of color, making sure that we change the faces of the folks in our criminal justice system. And I'm very committed to doing that with the tools that I have. We've worked really hard to diversify the faces of the bench, and the trial court bench, the Court of Appeals bench, and the Supreme Court bench in Oregon. We need to continue working that on our district attorney side, and frankly, on our criminal defense and prosecutor side as well. Thanks. That's another hour-and-a-half long conversation.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Governor Kate Brown. Thank you so much for all you've done for our state. I helped canvass for your re-election. So
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yay.
I'm super happy to see you up here.
And that's why I won by more than 7 votes.
Yeah. My name is Jen Arness, and I'm a student leader at Portland Community College. Students have reported not purchasing textbooks, myself included, and struggling with food and housing insecurity and dropping out of college before they earn their degree due to debt and high tuition costs. And House Bill 2642 would allocate $787 million to community colleges across the state to help avoid an extreme tuition hike. So my question is, when this bill reaches your desk, can we count on your support? And I know you said your legal counsel won't let you say yes or no. So rather, what are your thoughts and feelings on House Bill 2642?
Well, I would just say that my base budget, the level that I invested in community colleges, was absolutely unacceptable, and that's why I'm committed to getting additional resources in. I think there are a couple of pieces. Number one, keeping tuition rate increases down under 5%. Ideally, I'd like to say 0, but I think it's really key that we focus our resources where it's needed the most. And obviously, opportunity grants is one way to do that. The second piece is expanding the Oregon Promise program. We were the second state in the country to create that program. I think it's great that it applies to high school graduates. I think it needs to be broader in its application, and that more students need to have access to it. So yes, I support having more money coming into our community college system to ensure more students can attend. Thank you.
So I have a broad question about the supermajority that I'm going to focus a little bit and say, so there is a supermajority in the legislature in both houses of Democrats, and so if you don't get that revenue, that extra $2 billion, are Democrats responsible? Are they the reason that we won't have community college?
Well, I could say the buck stops here. Ouch. You know, this has been a challenge for Oregon for a couple of decades. I got my start in the legislature as an appointment. I got appointed in November of '91. I ran for office in November of 1992. And my slogan for my campaign was stable and adequate funding for schools. I was standing on the shoulders of someone some of you might recall, State Senator Shirley Gold, who spent over a decade in the Oregon legislature figuring out how she would get adequate and stable revenue for schools. So this has been a long-standing challenge for our education system in Oregon. It's going to require a high level of collaborative work. I know what it's like to serve in the superminority. I had that opportunity when I first came to the state Senate. I believe that solutions are better if they are more reflective of our communities, they're more resilient, and they're more respectful. And that means working across the aisle and around the state. And that's my expectation about how we get this done. And we're going to work as hard as we can to make it happen this legislative session.
Thank you. We have time for one question if it is very, very concise.
Okay.
That's your charge.
Governor Brown, we have a problem in helping the environment by encouraging more electric vehicles. Are there plans to give incentives to charging stations by generous tax deductions or even credits?
I am not aware of specific proposals, but I'm certainly supportive of creative opportunities to expand access to EV infrastructures. On the entire Western region, we have over 6,000 EV charging stations. That's British Columbia to California. If we want to make them a more viable transportation means, we have to make sure they're EV charging stations. And the Volkswagen settlement is dedicated toward that. I think it's 15%. I'm getting nods here. So we have to fight to maintain that, and I'm open to other creative ways to encouraging and incenting more investment in EV infrastructure, including in our affordable housing that we're building. Thank you.
And on that, I have one final one. You'll like this. In Texas, the speed limit on interstate freeways is 80 miles per hour. Why is Oregon moving so slow at 60 miles per hour? Any thoughts, Governor?
I signed a bill, I know I did, to increase the speeds on our interstate last year, 2 years ago, to what level? 75? 70? I haven't driven in a few years.
Getting up there.
So really, I haven't. So I haven't paid attention to speed limits. 70, but I have to say that the data from that is not great. We've certainly seen the amount of accidents on the freeways increase as a result of that speed limit. In Oregon, we like to make public policy based on data and evidence. So show me the data and what happens in Texas, and we'll do it here.
Absolutely.
It is very different in Texas.
Well, our time is up, and we have to pause the conversation for now. Please join me in thanking Mary Margaret Wheeler-Weber for producing today's program, and Governor Brown for answering your questions.
Thanks, you guys. I'm like, okay, now I'm really hungry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.